Welcome everyone to our session on Citywide Inclusive Sanitation. How far have we come? It's great to have this session, at the end of the Water Week, because we've heard a lot about the different aspects of inclusive sanitation, resilient sanitation, and so on. And this session kind of, I hope, draws on many of these learnings and pulls them together. So thanks a lot for joining us. This is convened by a number of different partners who have been working on the Citywide Inclusive Sanitation agenda, making significant contributions. So this is really excellent that we're able to convene this at Stockholm once again. In terms of housekeeping rules, by now everybody is already familiar with this, but once again, just make sure your microphones are muted except when you're speaking. This session will be recorded. I'm sure all of you had a pop-up which asked you to agree to this. The chat in the Zoom software will be disabled. So if you have any questions during the plenary, the breakout groups, please use the pathable chat box, which is outside of the Zoom in the browser. And this session was planned to be a super interactive session. So therefore, please be interactive in the breakout groups. Those are specifically designed to allow for enough time for questions and really rich discussions. So please bring your questions at the breakout groups. And in terms of the session format, we have about 15 minutes that we will introduce the concept of citywide inclusive sanitation. Then we have 2 rounds of breakout groups where you get to pick which topic you would like to dive into deeper. And then finally, we'll come back to the plenary, summarize all the discussions that happened in the breakout groups, and then really get marching orders for what's ahead in the next few years. Okay, so if that is clear, let's dive into Cwise. So 4 years ago at Stockholm, at the Water Week, this call to action on citywide inclusive sanitation was released. And it came from a whole different set of evolved thinking that business as usual was not working. We need to think of a different approach to achieving sanitation both sustainably and equitably, right? And when this call for action was released, I know I was still I was just finishing my master's, thinking about what can we do in the world, and I guess one of the action points that happened was I started my PhD on this very topic of citywide inclusive sanitation. So it's really great to see what has happened in the last 4 years. So from some of the big developments from my perspective are in 2016, before the call to action was released, there was a conference at Atlanta that was hosted by Emory University, where some sanitation experts came in and of course decided that business as usual was not working and we need to do things differently. And that was really the genesis of Cwise, I think. In 2017, of course, this call to action was released. In 2018, $1 billion US dollar commitment was announced by, I think, the then president of World Bank, Jim Kim, and Bill Gates, on unlocking the potential of Cwise at the Beijing Toilet Expo. And then in 2019, there was more clarity on what Cwise means in terms of the principles. And in 2020, we started seeing more academic publications on and research coming on what Cwise is and what are the different aspects of it are. So that's what happened in the last 4 or 5 years. And in 2021, what we see is Cwise is widely accepted as the way forward by various actors within the sector. There's both academic and practitioner research happening on this. Multiple degree programs on Cwise and online capacity development courses are being hosted. And of course, we also have many tools, diagnostic support guidelines, and also some costing and planning tools, etc., that's being developed and launched for helping plan Cwise. So that's kind of the summary of what has happened, some of the big developments, right? And in this next few minutes, I'd like to just put some light on why Cwise, and then what is Cwise, and then how do we achieve this gold standard of Cwise, if I may. So in terms of why Cwise, we're all in the World Water Week, so I'm not going to try and preach to the choir that 3.6 billion people don't have access to safely managed sanitation, or that 80% of all the wastewater is going into the environment without a treatment. I'm not going to say that, but there are various reasons why these problems exist. And some of them are right from the inequities that exist in terms of poor subsidy targets in the wash sector, a focus on toilets-only approach instead of looking at the entire sanitation service chain, wrong kind of technologies used in the wrong places, not giving adequate time and effort for planning, not being inclusive in the planning process with the stakeholders, inadequate policies and regulatory frameworks, and of course, a big lack of financial and human capacity. So all of this kind of, again, comes back to what I was saying is business as usual was not working, and we need an approach that systematically and holistically tackles this problem. So that's the what. Of course, I want to try and avoid the word solution, because just in a couple of days ago, there was a session where they said we should remove solution from the sanitation vocabulary. There's some heated debate on that, but let's just call CWIS as an intervention. It's not a universal panacea, but it's an excellent approach which systematically addresses multiple issues. And in terms of what CWIS means in one sentence, which is a pretty long sentence, is it is an approach to urban sanitation where everyone has equitable access to improved sanitation services through both sewered and non-sewered technologies without any contamination to the value chain. That's what kind of CWIS means. And if I have to visually narrate this, this picture in front of you is representative of a city in a low and middle income country, where the central part of the city is a bit better planned than the other parts. There's already some sewer infrastructure that exists. The population density is fairly high here, and so on. So that part in green could be, continued with sewer. And maybe there are parts, for example, with tenure issues like informal settlements or places that are quite far away from the treatment plant and like peri-urban regions. And these places could be handled with fecal sludge management services. And that's in orange. And what you see in purple could be, gated communities or malls or so on, which could also have decentralized sanitation. And this is I've only said 3 kinds of technologies, but there's a whole multiple spectrum of technologies that's possible, right? From omni-processors to all the way to container-based sanitation, right? So it's just to show that multiple different types of sanitation systems could coexist in the same city. And CWIS is, of course, interpreted slightly differently by all of us, even within this call, but they all boil down to the basics of making urban sanitation both equitable and sustainable. And to explain CWIS with a bit more detail and operationalizing what CWIS means in terms of principles, I would like to invite Christoph Luthi to explain to us each of the 6 principles. Christoph, over to you.
Thanks, Abhishek. So I'm going to shortly present the 6 principles. These were discussed in a conclave in Manila in 2019. Next slide. And I'm going to present these 6 a bit more detail. So the first and most important one, equity. So equity meaning here providing safe and affordable sanitation to everyone in an urban area, including marginalized communities, marginalized by gender, by social and economic reasons, and providing solutions that are equitable, affordable, and safe for everyone. That's what the equity aspect or principle means here. Next slide. The next one is providing environmental health and public health and allowing human waste that is safely managed along the entire sanitation service chain, starting from the containment through to reuse and safe disposal. Also a key principle that should be adhered to when designing CWIS programs and projects. Next. The third principle talks about mix of technologies. And Abhishek has just shown that on the city map. We're talking about providing context-specific solutions and not one size fits all. So a variety of sewered and non-sewered sanitation solutions that coexist in the same city, and depending on the contextual appropriateness and resource recovery potential, will need to be designed and looked at in each city individually. The fourth principle is about comprehensive planning. And planning here is meant to be inclusive and holistic, participatory in nature. That means also bringing on board the different stakeholders that need to be heard or also actively involved in the planning, the users, the political actors, the different service providers, and so on. And here, important to come up with short and long-term visions with an incremental perspective for implementing these plans on the ground. The fifth principle is around monitoring and accountability. Here we're looking at authorities that are able to operate with a clear and inclusive mandate according to performance targets, monitoring requirements, and have the necessary human and financial resources to perform these tasks. And then lastly, the sixth principle is about a mix of business models. This means that sanitation services will be deployed through a mix of and range of different business models, different funding sources, different financing mechanisms. And again, it is up to the individual context and cities to look at how the public and private sector landscape looks like to come up with the appropriate solutions. Those were the 6 principles in a nutshell. We're now going to move on. How do we actually implement these? And we'll move into breakout rooms. Over to you, Abhishek.
Yeah, so thanks a lot, Christoph, for that very swift summary of what these different principles are. And like I said, we understood the why and the what CWIS is, and to understand how each of these principles could be operationalized, we have breakout groups, right? You can go into each of these breakout groups that's led by experts from each of these agencies, and really they're going to present a global map of different case studies, different tools that they use to operationalize each of these. And this is your chance to really ask them how they did it and ask some of the tough questions that you've always wanted to. So for those of you who are not sure how to join breakout groups, it will open up right now. On the right bottom of your screen, you will be able to see breakout groups. Click that and choose which group you want to go. Remember, you will have 25 minutes to go to one breakout group, after which we'll call you back, and then you'll have a chance to choose another breakout group and explore that different topic. So my suggestion is please be wise in terms of which ones you choose. For example, if a breakout group is already getting crowded, go to something else, because all of these topics are cross-cutting. So let's try to make sure the interaction is maximized. So if that is clear, once again, time for you to choose your breakout groups and join them. And I also request each of the hosts to also choose the appropriate breakout groups that they're in charge of, and see you soon. See you in 25 minutes, actually. For those of you who've still not chosen a breakout group, you could, Lucas and I will try to assign you a breakout group, which you can join.
Hi.
Abhishek,
yes.
could you please move me to my breakout room?
Yes, Christine. I'm going to do that right now.
Thank you.
Yes.
Just put me on the equity group, yeah? If possible. Okay, thank you.
Hello, Abhishek. Can you move me to the first breakout room, please?
Okay.
I am Emmeline.
Emmeline,
Thank you.
Hi, Abhishek. Could you put me in the first breakout room?
Paul, just once again. Paul.
Thank you.
Yes, on you. Done.
Could I be in the first one?
Priya, Shivani, I'll go to the first one. Just 1 second.
Could I be in the second one, please? I'm David.
Yes, David, second one. Okay.
Thanks.
Priya to the first one.
Put me on the bad one, please.
Just 1 second. Priya, first one, and David, second one.
Bad one.
Thanks.
The third one, please.
Robert, yes, the third one.
Abhishek, 5, please.
Yes, 1 second. Robert, third one, right? Pavan, number 5.
You can also go to the breakout room, Abhishek, then I will take care of
Okay, perfect. Thanks, Lucas.
ones.
That's great. Thanks.
Okay, we still have like 5 people who are still not assigned to a breakout room. I can see here Andrea. Which breakout room do you want to join?
Lucas, the one,
Yes,
the second one on public health it has a low number, so you can also ask people to join that one. I think.
Yeah.
All the others have good numbers.
Okay.
The second, yeah. Okay.
See ya. Andrea, is it okay if I put you in room number 2? Okay, she left. Then I have here Yele. Hi, Yele. I hope I pronounce your name correctly. Which breakout would you like to join?
That's fine with me. Whatever one you maybe need more people.
Okay, I'll put you in the second one. Have fun.
Thanks.
Hi, Felicia, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, I think we can pause.
We back to the room. All right.
Hello, everyone. So I hope your discussions were very rich and really interesting. Very sorry that you had to be pulled right when things were getting interesting. I'm sorry, that's the nature of short breakout groups, but you can still continue some of these heated debates and conversations on the chat. But here's your chance to choose yet another breakout group, yet another interesting topic. And yeah, hope, let me just open the, yeah, sorry, now I have to do something different. I'm gonna recreate the rooms and then rename them as, in this case, only the names of the, the topics. So first one is equity, second one is environment and public health. The third one is planning. The fourth one is regulations. The fifth one is business models. Okay, the rooms are open once again.
There is a question by Pavan. He raised his hand.
Pavan, do you have a question?
Hi, just not a question. I think the chat is disabled at my end. So I'm not.
Yes, that's intentionally. The chat on the Pathable browser is available for you to continue conversations there. So the breakout groups are open once again. So I hope you remember which one you were in. Please choose a different one and continue your conversations there. Looking forward. I'm just sharing my screen for those of you who
And Abhishek, I think I need you to move me again.
No problem.
Thank you.
Yes.
Can you please also move me to the
Yes.
institutional?
Time it was even more heated and interesting and engaging than the previous one, maybe. So that's excellent. So now, could I request Bissy to let me just share this full screen to help. Oh yes, sorry. To help moderate and basically collect all the feedback from the different groups that we had, and to mainly answer, two questions. The first one is, what was the key learning? And the second one is, what are the missing pieces that we have to focus on moving forward? Bissy, over to you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Abhishek. Yeah, welcome back. I'm sure you've all enjoyed the discussion. The time looks so short, very robust. The group I was, very robust discussion. Without wasting so much time, because we have very limited time. So just go straight in form of bullet points in terms of those two areas. One, key learning from the discussion, and one or two missing pieces of puzzles from the discussion, or from how to move that particular focus area forward. So let me start straight away, and you have less than 2 minutes to do that. And let's start from equity. Equity group, can you come up, just tell us what exactly you've discussed and what are the key takeaways from us? Equity group, please.
Great, thank you, Bissy. So I'll try and summarize rapidly, and then on the key learning points, and then hand over to Kanika on the missing pieces. So 2 learning points, because we were talking about 2 aspects of equity, how to build equity into business model, so equitable service provision, as well as then sanitation workers, a critical part of equity in CWIS. So 2 key learnings there. On equitable service provision, we focused very much on public-private collaboration, the role of the public sector, the conditionality of public sector support, how that can be leveraged to incentivize equitable service delivery. So we looked at the example of SWEEP, which is a model in Bangladesh, where the public-private partnership is leveraged to incentivize the private sector partner to serve 30% of their customer base from low-income communities. There are other examples in other locations of leveraging that public sector conditionality to incentivize services to the poorest. And then the other key learning is around the fact that measures to protect sanitation workers' health, safety, dignity must be integrated into the design and delivery of sanitation services from the outset, as opposed to coming in after the fact when it's too late. So those are 2 learnings. Kanika, do you have anything to share around missing pieces of the puzzle?
Yeah, thank you. So one of the points which came up was how to eventually achieve political commitment and how to get governments and utilities on board to really adopt this approach and build ownership amongst them. And the second missing piece, which we thought was that how to really address this trade-off between mechanization of sanitation services while also taking care of the job opportunities of sanitation workers. And, trying to address the fact that if we go for mechanization, it does not lead to loss of livelihoods for the workers. Thanks, and over to you, Bissy.
Thank you so much, and for your contribution. So let's go to the second group of public health and environmental health. Who's representing us?
Thank you, PC. I'll take this one.
Okay.
So we had a lively discussion, and I think some of the take-home messages from our group is that shit moves through cities. It moves through both poor neighborhoods and wealthy neighborhoods. And in the interesting case study we heard about Dakar from Dr. Sene, the fecal exposure assessment showed that produce was a major exposure pathway to fecal contamination, both in poor neighborhoods and wealthy neighborhoods. So something that the residents may not even be aware of when they're living in a wealthy neighborhood, that they're still eating produce with fecal contamination because of poor fecal sludge management. So the take-home message from our group is that no one is safe until everyone is safe. and that's the health message for CWIS. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And any missing link? Any missing piece of puzzle that we need to address? Just one? Is there any?
Oh, missing piece.
Yeah.
Good question. I think making sure that the information from these exposure assessments translates to action. So in the case of Dakar, Dr. Sene gave very clear results of how the evidence was moved into action by the municipal government and by the grassroots organizations. But I think having the evidence and not using it for action to prioritize investments is a missing piece in many places. Thank you.
Excellent, excellent. Thank you so much, Kristen. Let's go to the third group and on comprehensive planning.
Thanks, BC. We discussed multiple elements of planning and also mix of technology. And thank you everyone for the rich discussion. The first aspect we discussed was traditional master planning and how to rethink master planning, make it more iterative and participatory. The other aspect we discussed also was capacity building, not just of the government, but also of consultants that are working on these planning exercises. The third aspect is to remember that these processes take time, so we cannot really just think on terms of 5-year projects or 6-year projects, but a longer term engagement. Also the importance of data, having good data for baseline to be able to do better monitoring and evaluation. And the fifth element we discussed also was advocacy, especially when it comes to politicians and decision makers, to make them more aware and also interested in some of these elements. Maybe the missing piece that we really talked about in both rounds was the fact that we have to remember that these things take time, and also we have to be flexible and learn by doing, basically, and have feedback mechanism to better plan and better design projects. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And the fourth group, institutions, regulations, and monitoring.
Thank you, BC. First, I want to say thanks for everyone who joining our breakout room discussion. And from our discussion, we can see what went on well is a strong leadership or the political will. And this would really push the CWIS to a very good stage. And also proper approach, such as output-based aid. This is also very efficient. And their cost sharing, demand-driven, all the key success factors. And these are what went on well. And the missing pieces found during the discussion, we discussed quite a lot about how we can do continuous monitoring and evaluation, specifically how to collect data to really monitor that, because if you cannot collect data, you cannot monitor. So these are the missing pieces. Also, we want to call for actions to expand their CWIS. Specifically, as we mentioned, we have come pretty far on CWIS, and we can still see it's a long way to go for us to achieve CWIS and SDG 6. So there's an African proverb saying, if you want to go fast, go along. If you want to go very long way, go together. So here I want to call for actions, and let's all work together on CWIS and SDG 6 for all. That's very important. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And definitely we are going to work together to move the CWIS agenda forward. And the last but not the least group, the mix of business and service models.
Great, thanks very much. And thanks to the group for patience as we had some technical problems, but also thanks to Bruce for really presenting a fantastic case study of business models for moving a market forward. I think the key learning is really that if you want to reach the poor with safe services, there isn't a business model. You do need a mix of business model, but even with the mix of business models, there is no business model that will get you to inclusive, safe service delivery without government engagement to help structure the market to both improve affordability and efficiency of cost of service delivery. And so in this case, the missing pieces, the research really showed clearly that people were willing to pay and able to pay an amount that wouldn't cover the cost, even the most efficient cost of services, and that a small subsidy would allow the providers to serve more and bring the costs down, but also really allow them to reach the poorest much more quickly. And so the missing pieces there, really, the first one was, who's that mandated authority that can structure the market so that revenues can be, that cross subsidies can be structured at scale and not entrepreneur by entrepreneur. And again, maybe underscoring that is both to reach the poor and to help the private sector scale up and formalize so that they can mechanize and provide more efficient services and really reduce the cost. So where is that public sector market authority to help structure the market? And then I think the other, maybe it's a key learning, maybe it's a missing piece, but kind of what are the steps to formalizing the market? We can't jump from nothing to perfect, but how there doesn't seem to be support for progress and incremental progression, and the private sector and research organizations can help inform what could work, but really structured support for that incremental improvement process seems to be missing. And maybe Bruce has anything that I missed.
Yes, we need to wrap up now. Any other comments from you?
Yeah, what I wanted to add on is a recommendation or a question raised by one of the participants. 30 seconds. Yeah, so he was suggesting that we can use a corporate social responsibility marketing strategy in order to support the gap, to cover the gap between willingness to pay and the cost of our services.
Yeah, thank you so much. I think these are very rich and useful comments. And for us to do justice to all your comments, I think because of time constraint, we have to find a way of putting all this together and probably share, have a platform we can to share all these rich contributions. So, and that's what we're going to do. But thank you so much. For me, I've learned so much from all this, and I'm sure a lot of our colleagues have learned a lot from all these comments and contributions. So I will hand over to Martin now, and I'll quickly, I'm sure maybe he's taking some notes. I'll pass some notes to him to really help us to wrap up very well and bring all the discussion together in terms of what's next, what's the way forward with Cwise in the next couple of years. Martin, over to you.
Thanks, Bissy. I don't know I'm going to wrap it all up, but I was asked to give some reflections on the work that we've been doing at the bank on Citywide Inclusive Sanitation for the last few years and where we see it going in the coming years. And I was asked to, be provocative, and we were hoping to have Barbara Evans here. Unfortunately, she wasn't able to come, and so I'm going to try and channel her as well. I mean, there's a lot that we align in our thinking on. So we've heard a lot about sanitation at World Water Week this week, and as Abhishek said, it's good that we've come at the end and some of that thinking can come together. We heard in one session that sanitation is at the heart of what we need to do to save our oceans, for example. Urban sanitation is so important to counter prevalent diseases. Sanitation for quality of life, city competitiveness. In the context of urban development, there was a quote of dynamic sanitation. And bringing, I think what CWIS has done is bringing safely managed sanitation and the sanitation service chain to the fore so that we think in these regards. But urban sanitation technologies and system selection and the underpinning urban sanitation planning processes, which should lead us to such selection, there may not be a single ideal or perfect solution. I think Elise just said nothing to perfect. you can't do that. So what we've learned in the past 3 or so years from this work, but not only that, on the work of urban sanitation in the preceding decades, before the acronym became mainstream in recent years, that there are many reasons why different decisions are made about technology choices, about sanitation systems and their associated management arrangements. It's influenced by what we see as our priorities. Providing services to as many people as possible could be our priority. Lowest life cycle costs, or maybe the lowest capital costs. Protecting public health, protecting the environment, managing GHG emissions, making systems as easy as possible to manage. Or maybe not thinking and merely coping. And if we ask 10 different people what their priorities are, it may not be one or a particular combination of the above. We may come up with different sanitation systems, none of which would necessarily be wrong, as they might respond to some of these priorities. So perhaps one of our biggest challenges is accepting that we will not end up with a perfect sanitation system, that we need to look at the trade-offs and the competing priorities and think more about most optimal interventions. We need to get away from a mindset in which technologies themselves have merits and think more about technologies and systems which help us achieve our objectives, preferably in a participatory planning process which engages the spectrum of stakeholders who bring their different perspectives to that process. We have to talk about conflicting objectives and trade-offs and be explicit about them. We have to learn to plan and design in a way in which we recognize and accept compromise as we advance our sanitation systems. So context matters, as we've heard so much today and this week. Our sanitation systems should be dynamic, not static, and cognizant of urban dynamics, of urban demographics and realities, of ground conditions and groundwater levels, while being strongly articulated with other urban services, and especially with water supply, drainage, solid waste and access ways for lots of obvious reasons. Sanitation services do not function in a vacuum, and especially not in unplanned low-income settlements in developing countries. They do not function in a vacuum. Our sanitation intervention should be gradualistic in nature, adapting as the rapidly changing urban areas of low-income countries themselves change. So, for example, in Ethiopia, we should not be promoting sewers in secondary towns where there is no water supply reaching the households to flush them. In Dhaka, we should not be promoting on-site sanitation in situations where the groundwater is so high that the septic effluent runs along the sides of the houses in open sewers. We need to be strategic and logical about this. So my marching orders to wrap up, Bissi and Abhishek. We need to learn from the giants who go before us, the Kevin Taylors, John Calvermattons, Neil McLeods, the condominial gurus from Brazil. We need to build on those lessons. We need urban sanitation systems that are designed and implemented with a full understanding of the urban context into which they're being placed. Urban sanitation service must be articulated with the reality of urban dynamics, as I said, and the complementary services. CWIS should not be prescriptive, it should be dynamic and responsive. We need to think about mandates, accountability, transparency and monitoring. We've heard a lot of those things today and during the week. Policies, institutions and regulations are really important. Funding and financing, of course. And again, as Elise was just saying, the role of the public sector, whether you've got a private provider or not, the role of the public sector is key. Changing the minds of conservative engineers and conservative utility managers. Getting away from only conventional sewers like those in Paris, Stockholm or Washington are the answer in my low-income country context. We need to think about business as unusual. But we also need to get away from silver bullets, one size fits all, off-the-shelf approaches. That's not how engineering, planning and design should be undertaken in any field, be it in internet startups, electric car manufacturers or green housing designers. So why should it be any different for urban sanitation? System management, active management, planning as a tool, even well-planned things need to be actively managed. Otherwise, we need to move away from design, build, neglect to design, build and provide services. So focus on service delivery, not on civil works projects. And as has been mentioned in the chat box and throughout the week, we need to leverage new sources of funding for the sector, climate funding, green funding, other funding. Subsidies have been mentioned. We have subsidized sewers systems around the world for decades, given their public health and environmental benefits to society beyond the immediate household. And this makes great sense. However, when it comes to on-site sanitation FSM services, we've seen a pushback in certain countries from governments because it's a private household affair, or from other donors even, who say that we don't subsidize on-site for CLTS in rural areas, so we shouldn't in urban. This is nonsensical. Why should we expect container-based sanitation service providers, for example, to cover all of their costs, including treatment and reuse, when other sanitation service providers are not doing this? We need robust utilities and service providers, and we should build on cross subsidies from water to sanitation, as was also mentioned in the chat box. I'm coming to the end now. There are too many people in the urban sanitation sector today, or in the CWIS sector, if you like, who think that one technology or one approach is the answer. There are, in fact, whole educational courses being set up to train urban sanitation specialists only on on-site sanitation and FSM. I understand the pendulum needs to swing, but it can't do it to the exclusion of a holistic approach to understanding urban sanitation. That's dangerous for the sector and it's disingenuous. We need rounded engineers, rounded sanitation specialists and planners who understand all facets of urban development and urban dynamics and how appropriate sanitation systems and services fit within these. Teaching them only about one part of the problem and a segment of the response will not provide us with cohorts of engineers and planners who can design and implement sanitation systems that work in the realities of their developing country cities. So to finalize, the beauty of sanitation, I always say, is that it touches on all aspects of urban development: health, well-being, dignity, environment, agriculture, climate, and more. But its curse is that it touches on all these aspects and sometimes can fall between the cracks or get captured by just one of these dimensions. So as a sector, we need to work together and not create fights between non-sewered sanitation and sewered sanitation tribes. We should be working together and complementing each other. The challenge is huge, and there is need for engineers, planners, and specialists in the sector who understand this spectrum of realities and the corresponding spectrum of service responses. We need to be rounded, be clear about our objectives, about the trade-offs of different systems, hear the voices of different stakeholders, and plan and design accordingly. So whether it's CWIS, Cwise, or CWIS, it's great that this is moving forward. Let's do this. Let's keep it going for the next 4 to 5 years and bring some of these ideas to fruition and make a big impact in the cities where we're trying to work. Especially, I'd like to thank Abhishek for pulling this session together and for making it run so smoothly. Thanks so much, Abhishek, and that's my closing words.
Thank you so much, Martin. I don't think I've heard wiser words in 3 minutes straight. So thanks a lot. Really pulled everything together. I want to take a moment to really thank all the conveners, the panelists. Thank you so much for putting your time over the last few months and certainly this week. It's really amazing to see how much of a rich discussion we had in each of these breakout groups and the plenary and so on. Thank you to all the participants who made it through the week and still wanted to sign up for one more big session at Stockholm. Thanks a lot for that. And hopefully next year or the next time we host a session on how far have we come in CWIS, we'll have to plan for a 3-hour session and not a 90-minute one. So thank you so much, and hope to see many of you on this side of presenting CWIS in the next opportunity we have, and wish you a wonderful weekend, and thank you so much once again.